Hey, this is Glendon Cameron with the Hustler Mindset, pimping your mind for success. This is in podcast form. Just listen and learn. In putting together this program, I had to really do some soul searching because one of the things that I've learned in the last 4 years is you can put out great information, you can put out a ton of helpful and useful things, essentially giving people the tools to be successful, yet somehow it doesn't happen for a lot of people. And I've wondered about that and I've pondered about that. Then I had to really deconstruct my life and myself and how things went. We live in the United States of America. Now, this will pretty much work anywhere, but we live in the United States of America and it works well here. The United States of America is a system. The country is a system set upon systems set upon systems. You learn the rules and the regulations of those systems, you can be successful. The hustler mindset is a whole completely different set of rules. When I speak of universal law or the power of your subconscious mind, which was written by Dr. Joseph E. Murray years ago, people kind of look at me sideways. They're like, yeah, it's got to be something else. It's got to be something else. What took me years to learn how to do was to use those laws and facilitate and manipulate the laws of the system. And a lot of people don't really get the fact that you can do many things that will make your life better, richer, and more profitable by learning this. When I was in that boarding house and I was going through all that hell, my life didn't get better until I started making what I call conscious choice. Where I was in the chair at the guy's office in Powertel, and he was like, hey, I could possibly get you 2 more weeks. And I made a conscious choice. I was like, no, I'll leave now. I will figure it out. Those were my exact words. I didn't realize how pivotal that was, because I want you to understand it was an extremely emotional moment. This guy, and he wasn't, he didn't want to do it, but he was directed to do it by company mandate, that I no longer had a source of income. And he was letting me go. I didn't have any money in the bank. I was already living hand to mouth. And in the midst of all that, I made one of the best decisions of my life. No, I'll go now. I will figure it out. And the thing is, I wasn't mad or pissed off. Somehow that opened up a door of determination. And where I'm going with this is, you have to start thinking about what you're doing when you're doing it. Most of us operate on a reaction mode or a passive mode. That day I was operating on a very active and determined mode. And that was the day that set the chain of events where 2.5 years later I had my own business. I went through a series of jobs that gained me a network, that gained me contacts, that just literally changed my life. Another point, I was at one of the storage auctions and one of the old timers that seemed to like me, and he was just like, he said, don't bet your heart on this. You can't make a full-time living at storage auctions. And I said, well, I intend to. There are a lot of people who really believe they could not make a living full-time at storage auctions. I never let that enter my mind because I just saw the opportunity. So let's really just deconstruct those two things. When you're presented with an opportunity, you're presented with a task, you're presented with a test, relationship issue, how you make that determining effort in your brain is very pivotal to the outcome that you will or you will not get. I have consulted about a few hundred people now. And I will say the biggest thing that I've noticed is a lot of people, A, don't have the proper information. That's a big problem. And I should say B, don't have the information. That's a big problem. Because A is the inability to believe in themselves. There's a certain classification of people. There's a group of people who are waiting on permission to be successful. For the purposes of this session, I'm going to say black people, some Latino people, and some white people. They're waiting on the system or the government or to make things better for them. I had a thought process, fuck that. And it brought me into a very ethical conundrum, because when I was in the storage auction business, I made a lot of money off a lot of people because they gave me stuff, and I did not tell them that, hey, those Fat Farm jeans, you can get $50 all day on eBay for that. It was a decision. It was not a mistake. It was like, oh, you're going to give me these clothes that I can make money with? Thank you. A lot of people consider that unethical. How I got my job at Rent a Crate, by faking my references. A lot of people consider that unethical. I sleep well at night because this was my thought process and framework. I need to move from where I am currently living to a different level. Number 2, I don't have any help. Number 3, time is wasting. That was the guy where it's like, okay, I'm not going to rob anyone. I'm not going to kill anybody. I'm not going to. There were certain limits that I had set that I wasn't going to do. But if I could use use my resources, using whatever I had at hand to get ahead, yeah, I did it. And it was a mental transference from my upbringing, which was do the right thing, pray, and put it in God's hands. That, even as a child, that never ever really worked for me. It just never did. So I do believe that you do get assistance from the universe, but a lot of it, like say you have an ancestor or a relative that looks over you. I believe in stuff like that. But also, you got to look at a larger system. I think when you are trying to be successful, some of the biggest problems aren't just competition, but it's the battle that goes on in your mind. Because somewhere during the hardwiring, the mental framework of who you are, there's a set of principles, guidelines, rules, and regulations. And you're not really aware of them. They were put there either by your parent or grandparents or society. Something put those rules in there. When you start making your own rules and guidelines, it creates conflict, because it took me literally 3 years to really start to own a lot of my new philosophies or actually accept older philosophies. And that's when things just started to happen. It was just like, it was night and day. It was just, and every time that I would default back to what I want to call inbred mental framework, the stuff you get from your parents, I would start to fail. Now, if you had parents who were very aware, very supportive, and either they purposely knew how the universal laws worked or they didn't, and they gave you a good framework, you might be good to go already. You may have parents that's like, you could do anything, and they didn't just say you could do anything and be anything. They said you could do anything and be anything. However, there's a process. There's a certain set of steps. That's what you need to do. This is, they didn't just say you could do anything. They showed you, because in my research, and I read up on successful people, and frequently their kids do very well from a combination of maybe personal grooming, or, when I say personal grooming, father grooming son, father grooming daughter, to connections, because successful people have an energy about them where they want to hang out and live next to successful people. All that plays a role. You might, and this is going to be really unflattering and it's going to be insulting to some people, you might be very successful more so by what neighborhood you lived in versus all the hard work you did in your life, because it created certain connections that you just couldn't get any other way. When you live in a neighborhood with people who are decision makers, and John says, "Hey, my son needs a job. You know anything?" And you have a pipeline of 20 business owners, and if one of them has a job, I've actually seen businesses create jobs for people like that. I've seen it. So there's a lot that has to go on with your mental framework, because I saw that at one stage in my life when I was mentally unaware, before the hustler mindset came to be. And I was jealous and I was envious. It was like, no one's ever done that for me. I was pissed off and I didn't understand it. After I went through the framework change, I had someone do that for me. I was working for this company. It was the next to last job, and I was getting screwed. Some people I reached out to, and they said, "Hey, we need to get them out there." And they took me around, interviewed, and I got another job in a week. Networks are incredibly important. And I wouldn't have been in that network if I didn't change how I thought. Now, let's go with universal law. Let's go with the law of intent. When I was leaving PowerTel, I had a strong intent to better myself and figure it out. That was my intent. And there was not a lot of emotional garbage with it. It was just like, this is my situation. This is where I'm at. This is what I need to do. It was very clear. Because one of the things is, when you go through very hard times, it cuts the clutter out. You can't afford to be like, well, look, no, you know, it was just like, I don't have any money. I'm going to get, and at the time, unemployment didn't go on for a year. You got 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12. It wasn't like it is now. So even with getting unemployment, that clock was still ticking. And it was ticking hard. Hard, I tell you. Hard. So I knew I had to come up with something. And as I look back and I really, really take it apart, the lack of the emotional components, the stuff, the grit, the oh, woe is me, and all of this other stuff, I didn't have that. I had none of that stuff. It was just pure, unfiltered intent. This is why I tell you to go somewhere quiet. Turn off the television, turn off your phone, and just really let some stuff go. And this is one of the reasons I meditate, because I used to be, I guess what's called ADD or whatever, all over the place, and couldn't sit and focus, and was just getting on the people like, that's just who you are. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You can change your personality if you want to. And people are like, what? You can change your personality. Years ago, I took a handwriting analysis test, and this was after I read a book that said you can change your personality by changing your handwriting. And it's true. I've changed my handwriting 3 different times. It was kind of fat and real bold when I was a kid. Then I wanted to be more artistic, and every time I changed my handwriting, I changed my personality. Which is when I tell you that when you sit down and you write your goals out, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. There are many things that happen. So you can change your personality. So if you have a personality that you're not happy with, because one of the things with cultural narratives is you are who you are, and people should just love you for who you are. To an extent, I agree with that. To another extent, if you are not happy with who you are, you need to change. And you can change. That's the thing that people miss. They get so caught up in, this is just who I am. Understand, you were developed. The religion you have, unless you picked it as an adult, it was given to you by your parents. You didn't pick to be a Baptist. You didn't pick to be a Roman Catholic. You didn't pick to be a Seventh-day Adventist. Your parents picked it for you. And frequently, when the child grows up and becomes an adult and says, hey, I don't want that anymore, there's friction. Because they feel that since it was good for them, it should be great for you. And that may not be the case. So with that, you have to understand who you are to a large extent, was determined by other people. Sometimes some of you got lucky and had folks who had your best interests at heart and did a great job. There's others who you didn't have folks who looking out for you, and the job wasn't as great. Matter of fact, you have a lot of angst, you have a lot of hang-ups, and you're worried about a lot of stuff. This is why you have to start learning how to think yourself through your life, because with the law of intent is super important. And I'll give you an example of the law of intent. I have made mistakes in life, as all of us have. Whenever I've made a mistake that wasn't intentional, it happened as a course of me maybe pushing hard. There was a point where in our business, I did some stuff that lost us about $60,000. My partner was not happy with me, and matter of fact, she was pissed, and we talked about it for about 2 weeks, and she's like, okay, fine, I understand, because I know you didn't do it intentionally, and I didn't. It just happened really pushing. I made a very poor business decision. Now, when I have intentionally fucked with people, and I don't even know if I should give you this information, because I'll give you this information. When you fuck with people and you have the ethical programming that was given to you, you actually punish yourself. Because you always hear this, it's like karma. That's another thing. I don't believe in karma. I do believe in sowing and reaping, which is different than karma. Karma is, I do this bad thing, and at some point this bad thing's going to come to me. Sowing and reaping is, the more stuff that I put out with a certain intent, the more of that stuff I get back. You see, once again, intent is super, super critical. I can literally fuck with people now and not suffer any ill consequences, but since I'm an involved person and I hire a being, as I like to joke, I use my powers for good. You would really, really have to fuck with me for me to come after you. And I've done it I've done it 4 times in my life. And nothing bad happened to me. Because I've subconsciously turned off the self-induced punishment meter on all of them. And one was before I became involved. The other 3 were after I became involved. And see, this is why that's why I have my 24-hour and 48-hour policies. When I see stuff or crazy stuff, I ask myself, is this really worth powering up? Because every battle's not worth fighting. But I'm telling you, you can literally mess with people. This is how, the people who control the world do the stuff they do. And people are like, nope. All of these people are fully aware of universal law. They're fully aware of law of intent. They're fully aware of the law. They're fully aware of this stuff. And they use it every day. And they teach their kids. That's when you sometimes meet these kids who are just like so amazing and so confident. Their parents are teaching them that stuff. It makes a tremendous difference. So the law of intent is very critical. Now, once you learn how to control your thought process, and when I say control your thought process, this is not being unemotional. This is being able to think in the midst of emotion. We as human beings are extremely emotional creatures. A lot of people hide it better than others, but the emotions are still there and they still have impact. And this is why when you learn how to manage you, like say you're in a bad marriage and you want out. If you say to yourself, and you write down as a goal, I want out of this marriage and my intent is to gain my freedom from this marriage and I don't want to harm anybody. Which is actually the converse, because a lot of times when people are breaking up and getting divorced, harm is the name of the game. You can do it. You can actually do it. One of the things that I've learned with the law of intent is you have to actually know what you want. And this goes back to that programming. There are many people who are afraid to want bigger and better things for their lives. They're afraid because it's part of that programming. You shouldn't want money. I see it all the time on YouTube. I see people that are pretty much in dire straits saying you shouldn't want money, you should just help people. And to a degree, people should look out for other people. And this is my stance on that. I look out for old people. I look out for pregnant women. I think if you're a fully functioning human being, it just depends. Like there was on one of that show with John Connors, there was a man, an Arab man, and standing in front of his tire because it was flat and he looked like he couldn't change it. And I will be straight up 100%, I would have passed him by. Because you're a man. You should be able to change your own tire. If you've never done it before, there's instructions. You should be able to figure it out. And I looked at that, and this is part of another larger cultural thing that's going on. And it's actually making men very feminine, saying that it's okay for you not to know how to do certain things. I didn't grow up in that world. But that's part of the larger thing, because I want you to think about what's going on. And this is going like social, economic, and political, but it'll be brief. If you have a group of men who are no longer men and a group of women who are no longer women, what do you have? Confusion. A confused group of people is very easy to manipulate and lead. So, back on to point. With the law of intent, when you are really operating at a high level, you can write goals and they can manifest. And see, this isn't what like The Secret. There was a big thing, The Secret, where if you just, the law of attraction. It's more to it than that. It's a law of intent. Because, give you an example. Say you're trying The Secret, right? And the law of attraction. But you want something, but in your let's say childhood programming, you have something in you that says that's not good. In your adult life, you're like, I want that, but your childhood programming, which is on your hard disk and it's deep, is saying, no, you can't have that. So you go away and you're like, the law of attraction doesn't work. See, this is what a lot of people are missing. There's a lot more components. It's kind of like the 10 Commandments. If you know anything about the religion, there's really like 110 commandments, but they choose those 10 to showcase. There's several more, and many people don't know that because people don't research, people don't read, and they don't do what I like to call guinea pig testing, where you take some things, you test it out on yourself, and see how it works. They don't do that, but if you use the law of attraction and you understand universal law, the law of action, the law of intent, the law of desire, it becomes much more powerful. I'll give you an example. I recently got a new vehicle, and in terms of good financial management, it doesn't make sense for me. For you, it might make sense, but it doesn't make sense for me to buy new vehicles. And these are the reasons. One, vehicles now are made better than they've ever been made in history. Virtually any car made around 2002, 2004, they last. You're going to get 200, 300,000 miles out of them, even if you don't take care of them. That's just, the average car is so much better built than it was before. These cars are going to get 200, 300, 400,000 miles. They're going to get it. So you buying a used vehicle with 30, 40, 50,000 miles, you're saving yourself a ton of money, and you're going to get 75% of the utility. So I wanted the BMW X5. I looked and I did my research. And this is why you're doing your research. If you're ever buying a car and you want a particular car that's very popular, chances are there's a glut. Because if it's expensive and popular, that means a lot of people lease, depending upon your location. Because I noticed that the people in Florida actually were buying their X5s, and the people in Atlanta were leasing theirs because there was a huge glut. Because I looked at it for around 3 years. So I got my information together. I knew it was a glut. I wrote down a figure. I said, it is my intention to get this vehicle for this figure. And that figure was roughly $8,900 less than what most people were pricing them for. I went to 15 dealerships. 14 told me no. The 15th, I walked in and I told them what I was paid, and it was like tax, that was everything. That's where we had to be for me to get it. 45 minutes later, me and Thor were out the door. That's the law of intent. When you have that intention and you have these other things that you're like, oh, because I knew I could get it. I knew I could get exactly what I wanted for the price that I wanted. Based on research, law of intent, and belief in myself. Because I wasn't going to spend any more. And I walked out the doors of 14 dealerships to testify to that. So what I'm telling you is, when you have the law of intent, when you really understand this stuff, you can get certain things. Also, with the law of intent, there's also opportunity cost, and that's like part of something that's not part of the secret. If I wanted to run a $1 billion business, starting today, right now, I could get there. But what's the opportunity cost? There's an opportunity cost. And I actually don't know what it is. And since I don't know what it is, it's hard to say what I would pay. But that's not my intention anymore. It used to be. It used to be before we got sick. Our goal was to get like a grocery store or some and turn it into this super thrift store, and turn it into like a $20 million business, because we understood. We were at that point where we were finally understanding the game, and then we both got sick. My partner was diagnosed with cancer, and here we are. During that transformation, I came up with some new ideals, and that's no longer my primary goal. My primary goal is totally different. But see, that's the law of intent. When you start having little wins, and that's something that I should really caution you on. The law works for anyone, anywhere. The problem is you have to get over your programming of, if you failed, you're not good enough. If you fail, quote, God didn't want you to have it. If you failed, you're somehow unworthy. Frequently, when you fail certain things, part of it is you didn't do your research. I mean, if you only run like the 40-yard dash in 5 seconds, 5.2, you're not going to be a pro-level running back, because there's certain things. But you can run a 5.2 40 and become a sports agent and have 10 or 15 pro running backs and make more money than all of them, because you're managing all that. See, it's really about knowing who you are, your limitations. And yes, and I said limitations because that's another misnomer. All of us as human beings have limitations. Every last one of us. We all have mental limitations, physical limitations. We do. Now, the good news is you can improve and expand those limitations. See, we live in a pop culture where if you say something like that, no, you shouldn't tell people that. And part of that is because people don't think and they don't go all the way to the other side. Yes, you have limitations, but you can expand and get bigger. It's like working out in the gym. Your limitation is maybe 90 pounds or the bar when you first start working out. But over time, with steady progression, the law of intent, thinking you can do it, depending upon your genetic makeup, you might be at 300 pounds in a few months or a few years. But you will get there if you believe and you continue to work hard. You will get there. So that's the thing. So don't go, oh, I got limitations. Don't start losing your mind thinking that's such a bad thing. It's just a part of, being human. And it's something that actually can make you a better person when you understand your limitations. I know my physical limitations were nothing after I got sick. It was just like going up a flight of stairs was debilitating. I mean, seriously. One time I actually sunk to my knees and I just had to catch my breath after going up one flight of stairs. Now I am squatting 455 pounds. I did that clean. It was a solid rep. I could probably do 500. Probably could. I went from that to doing 500. Can grab 5 something easily off the floor. So knowing that you can, even when you have issues such as being sick or Say you didn't get the right education growing up and you're like 50 and you're thinking, oh God, it's over. It's not over. If you understand universal law, you could do more between the ages of 50 and 54 than you did between the ages of 1 and 50. Many people don't understand this stuff, and that's why they're not living the lives that they can. They don't fully conceptualize it. They don't fully understand it. I'm sitting here talking to you in the middle of the day, and since I worked this weekend, this was kind of like one of my off days, and I was like, hey, I made a promise. I put it in the Facebook group. It's like before 9 p.m. this is going to happen. And I could do it. This morning, I just went out because I knew I'd be working this evening. When I say an off day, that's 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours. And I have tremendous flexibility. This was a written goal to be able to come and go as I please, most often. I will trade some of that freedom for better opportunity, but it has to be significantly better for me to give up this freedom, because it's very, very intoxicating. And you can get this kind of life too if you understand the law of intent. All right, this is Glendon Cameron. This is the first session of the Hustler Mindset, Pimping Your Mind for Success. This is a guided course to throw out some ideas, to give you some concepts and something that you want. I suggest that you listen to this 3 or 4 times. And each time you listen to it, you're going to get more and more and more. All right, this is Glendon. I will see you on the good side.